Week 3 of my theater school experience, and this week was, it was weird. Truth be told, I don't really know how best to describe it because in the middle of the week we had two snow days on Wednesday and Thursday, and that messed with a lot of things. The first being obviously my classes, and the second being my big crew calls. The first crew calls that we were actually supposed to do. So I'll talk about those in a second. Snow days are weird. They really interrupted the flow of the week and what we were doing, and I didn't really know what to do during those time. I finished some homework, I got some rest, which a lot of other people did the same thing and said it was pretty needed for themselves. But for me personally, I was just kind of bored. I couldn't really go out because everything was closed or the roads were just atrociously bad. And I made a whole video on snow days and just what I used to do as a kid versus what I do now. So please go check that out. I'd really appreciate it. But that aside, I do want to talk about the week still because it's it's always important to look back at what you're doing, I think, and just reflect and try and see what you can take from it. And we've actually actively been asked to do that by our school and reflect on what we did each week and see where it takes us, which is part of the reason I'm making these videos. The other part is just that it's an exciting part of my life and I want to share it with people. Moving on. So, in this week, I came to a fairly important realization. That being, I am going to mess up a lot while I am here, and I don't always handle it the best way. I'm the kind of person who doesn't really like making mistakes. I don't like being wrong. I don't like making errors, and all that might sound pretty generic or understandable. You might not you might feel the same way yourself, but for me it's a particularly big problem because I really do not take mistakes well. I don't like messing up. I don't like disappointing other people. I don't like failing, and that's not a healthy mentality. That's not to say that you should try and mess up or that you should try and fail, but making mistakes and growing is a big part of life, and you need to be willing to acknowledge your mistakes and grow past them because at the end of the day, that's how you grow and how you improve as a person. And I just kind of forgot that, I guess, or I never really forget it, I guess, but what I do forget is that it's okay and that I don't need to beat myself up over it. And that has always been a habit of mine where if I'm doing something and I don't get it right away, I start just relentlessly tormenting myself over it. And it's something that I've had to work on and something I will continue to have to work on for the rest of my life, and a part of myself that I'm less proud of, but I guess that is something that is currently a weakness of mine that I need to be willing to change and improve. Speaking of changing and improving, let's talk about the actual week now, shall we? So the week itself was, there's essentially two big things that I want to talk about, and one of them is crew, which, yeah, we'll get to it. The first one that I'm going to talk about, though, is acting class, because that's always the one that strikes the biggest chord with me. It's my favorite class by far, just because acting is inherently something that I very much enjoy doing, and a lot of the time it's, doing scenes or playing fun games with my classmates, which you're always going to have fun doing that if you enjoy acting. But the main reason that I brought up the whole making mistakes thing was that we had an assignment, and I don't think I did particularly well on it, personally speaking. I think that I should have been able to be more prepared and to know what I was doing on it a lot more. Um, a lot of things that my teacher pointed out when we were going over it in notes kind of resonated with me more on the ideas of, yeah, I should have probably made this choice different, or yeah, I should have probably made these emotions stronger. And the biggest one that he brought up was the idea that I should really go for tactics more. So tactics in a scene are pretty much what you would expect tactics to be in almost any other scenario. It's basically, how do you go about completing your objective? And as an actor, that essentially means what your character wants to do. How do you try and convince your scene partner to go along with it? Well, I say convince, but essentially, the main idea boils down to, I want to blank my opponent or my scene partner or whatever with blank standing in for a verb. So say you're trying to talk to somebody, and you want them to believe what you're saying, you want to convince them, or your objective is to, I don't know, win some money in a gambling arena. You want to trick them, which is very different from trying to play emotions, which you really should not try and do as an actor. Just a bit of general acting advice that I often forget, and that a lot of other people do as well. You don't want to play emotions because they're not really tangible. You can't play sadness. You can't play fatherhood. You play to what you want to get, and as a result, emotions are generated. Anyway, the biggest advice, though, that I got for the scene, and advice that I probably need to hear more and that I forget about a lot of the time, is go big. So acting for theater is very different from acting for film. On film, every single expression is captured. Everything you do can be seen in a bunch of different angles from different cameras, different lightings, and whatever. And the director will essentially pick the one that they think is best across however many takes, and then that is what you see on the screen after it's been heavily manufactured. With theater, you don't really get that. You kind of get one instance to do your best, and that's it. It's a fleeting moment, it's gone, and if you miss it, sucks to be you. Because of that, it's very important in theater to be willing to go big, because theater is one of those places where it's very hard to go too big. Now, that's not to say it's necessarily hard to overact, because you can tell when somebody is overacting, but you're not necessarily gonna find theater to be a place where somebody near shouting at you the entire time is gonna feel out of place. And that was similar to the advice my teacher gave me, wherein in the scene, he really wanted me to go for a lot more tactics, and I struggled to come up with it when we did the run a second time. I feel like I could have done better, and we have more opportunities to improve the scene, and I really want to be able to improve it for my own sake, because I know that I can do much better, and I'm willing to give it a shot. And the other big thing to talk about this week is crew calls, which I've kept alluding to and will now finally get into. So, relating to the snow day topic, hence why I brought them up, we were actually supposed to start working on things on Wednesday, which was the first day that the snow had fallen, and there was quite a bit of snow on the ground. Not a lot for me, but a lot for the people who live here. And as a result, everything was shut down, so we couldn't go to school. And because the actual campus was locked down, we couldn't get started on lights. This put us 2 days behind by default. So on the first day, we essentially spent a whole bunch of time just finding the lights, digging them out of storage, and then replacing the barrels, which essentially are different lenses of varying sizes. So some are 50 degrees, some are 35, some are 26, etc., etc. That all give different looks to the light, and then just adjusting them as needed. If I can find a picture of the par 4 lights that I'm talking, or not par, the source 4 lights that I'm talking about, I'll put them on screen right now. But anyway, the first day, we also started hanging these lights, and we got through, I want to say, just under half of them with the hanging part, and that took quite a while. And then the next day, which was the Saturday, our crew head accidentally came in, and they did not have to. They thought they had to be there at 8 a.m. to deal with another crew that they were running. They did not do this. They actually did not need to be there. So instead, they spent the entire morning and afternoon just hanging lights, and they ended up getting most of them done. It was a massive help, gave us so much more time to work with. I actively feel bad for them because they have not had a good chance to sleep in forever. And I was grateful. I also really wanted him to be able to take a nap. um, anyway, so thanks to all their hard work, on the second day, we started cabling. So basically, plugging all the lights in and then connecting the cables to the grid over top. If you've ever been inside a theater before, which maybe you have, um, on the roof, there will typically be some sort of network of pipes that you'll see. They're just black pipes with just interconnecting. Essentially, it looks like a checkerboard or any type of grid, hence the name. And lights will typically be hung from there just so that they can then be angled and shone onto the stage. But you have to plug them into something, and as a result, you have to get cables and then run them along the grid lines and then tie those cables onto the grid so that they're not just hanging or dangling all over the place. That was really what most of the second day was, figuring out how to plug in all of these lights and then making the network actually run, tying down any loose cables, and doing whatever we could. And then on the third day, which was yesterday, we essentially just kind of wrapped up all of the preliminary work. We have hung all the lights. Some of them might still need to be moved a few inches or around a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's more like every one or two, or a couple odds and ends rather than having to redo the entire thing. They have all been cabled, and cables have all been accounted for, plugged in, so all of the lights have power. And we also tested them and set them to their appropriate channels so that you can essentially actually program the lights. It was a lot of work to get done in 3 days, and I'm honestly so proud of our crew for being able to get it done, because it was a lot of stuff that had to get done 2 days behind schedule, and we managed to do it. So I'm very proud of them and what they've accomplished. If I had to wrap the week up in a simple term, it would be difficult, or no, challenging but rewarding. The reason I use the word challenging instead of difficult there is because one of my teachers has raised the interesting point that if you say something is difficult, you're less likely to do it. But if you say something is challenging, well then you're going to take it as a professional challenge, and then you're going to work hard to improve yourself. And I like that mentality. I really like the idea of challenging yourself and pushing yourself to improve rather than saying something is difficult and just kind of giving up on it. And that's a mentality that I think will carry me quite far in life. So I'm grateful for having heard it. But yeah, if I had to condense it, a challenging week, but one that, while shortened and definitely a bit awkward in terms of its placement, one that I still managed to take a lot out of.